Thank you so much for joining me on another episode of Espresso Entrepreneur, spotlighting different businesses on sometimes what they love to drink, but always talking about their business and their story. So I'm super excited to have my guest Gwendolyn with us today. Gwendolyn, thank you so much for the time today. I really appreciate it.
Yes, Macy, thank you so much for the invitation. I'm excited to chat with you.
Of course. Well, I'm super excited because Gwendolyn and I connected. I think it was about maybe last week. And she was just sharing with me her story, and we just found out we had so much in common. She is so accomplished in all of the fields that she's doing, but especially the past few years, she's educating me a lot on the new fields that she's been in. But then we also found out we love working with our family, and we just have a lot of commonality. So I'm super excited to kind of dive in and kind of showcase her story. So Gwendolyn, why don't you kind of kick us off and tell me a little bit about, your journey and what are you up to, and just kind of sharing all of that great stuff.
Yeah, absolutely, Macy. My journey started a long time ago, probably about 30 plus years ago. I got my start in corporate America, working for a very large healthcare provider here in the Illinois area. And I just fell in love with making sure all of the pieces fit together for me. Managing two ambulatory care centers, I got to see how the front desk, medical records, the physicians all impacted the patient at the end. And so it became very, very important for me to make sure that all of those pieces fit really well together. And so that's where my love for administration and operations came into play. And so fast forward to 2013, I got a diagnosis of systemic lupus. Went to get out of the bed one day and my body just was not responding the way that it should. And so we were able to get me into the doctor. And a couple days later, she called and she's like, I really need you to go see the rheumatologist. Well, at that time, I had never heard of, a rheumatologist before, didn't know what, he specialized in or any of that. And so I'm like, for what? Just tell me what's wrong and let's fix it. Cause I got, stuff to do. Not really understanding the significance of what was about to happen in my life. And she's like, no, I really need you to go. And I'm like, why? Just like, tell me what's wrong. Let's fix it. And she's like, I think you might have lupus. And I'm like, well, I don't know what that is, but let's fix it.
Yeah.
She's like, I really need you to go. And I'm like, okay, fine. And so I went to see the rheumatologist. He did a whole nother battery of tests and came back, with a positive diagnosis. And so life for me just really began to change in that moment because I had to learn and understand what this was and how it was affecting my body. And so it was a really long recovery. And so I was in recovery for about 9 months, really trying to figure out what was happening to my body and getting better. And I realized in that moment that working a traditional job just wasn't going to work well for me anymore. I didn't want to, have to ask for permission to see all of the specialists or explain why I might need a nap in the middle of the day and those kinds of things. And so I was just like, God, what am I supposed to do? And so I clearly just heard like it's in your hands. And I'm like, what does that mean? Like, what is that? And so I started to just do some research and see like, do people need support with their businesses like online? Is this something I could potentially do from home? And then I found that there was this entire industry that just opened up a whole new world for me. And it's been nonstop ever since.
Yeah, and it's so great. Well, I just want to say thank you so much for sharing your story, first of all, because it's not, my I shared with you that my mom had lupus and then, my
Yeah.
grandma and my aunt. So it's running a lot in the family. And I thankfully haven't witnessed any of that and I haven't experienced any of it firsthand. And I've only heard like probably like a quarter of the stories of what my parents had to go
Yeah, I'm
through.
sure.
Because my mom got diagnosed with lupus like 2 weeks after they got married, and she was only like
Wow.
22.
Oh my gosh.
So it's one of those things, but now, thankfully, she's all healthy. All of my
Yes.
family who had it are so healthy. And I think my mom actually has the most energy out of all of us now. Like the rest of us, like, we need our afternoon nap, and she's just like, no, we should just do this, and we're like, what are you talking about? We can't do any of that. So it's
I love it.
funny. It's funny. So thank you so much for sharing. But yeah, so I would love for you to share a little bit on what you do and how you help companies, because it's really interesting, especially in this new era as we're embracing all of these online things. And I think people are starting to learn that they do need stuff like this. They need people to help them.
Yeah, happy to. So, we are an online virtual assistant agency. And so we support visionary CEOs and executives and small businesses across the globe, helping them to really like redeem their time and improve their efficiency and productivity. And so, we provide executive administrative support that looks like your calendar management, your travel management, data entry. It could be helping you implement a new system in your business, handling your emails, coordinating all of your meetings, your documents, your travel logistics, file management, helping with your expense reporting, right? And even some, personal assistant type services where we're giving you reminders about your personal appointments and tracking those personal appointments that you might have, whether it be for you or members of your immediate family. And so it really is tailored support that our execs get to really help them stay focused on their strategic initiatives, right? And on the larger things that they need to deal with their companies instead of like the admin functions that need to get done, but don't necessarily need to be done by them. And so we've been in the virtual space for about 10 years now. I started building a small agency and team about 4 years ago, I believe. And
Wow.
so, yeah, it's been super amazing. So we have a small team of 10 right now, and it's just super exciting with the work that we get to do and the people that we get to work with.
Yeah. And it's so funny because I remember when we connected, I was like, I can't believe it's like it's been around that long. But now that I think about it, 10 years was only 2014, and that's
Yes,
actually not that long ago. I don't know why I thought like 10 years was like the 90s. Like that's
because it
obviously
sounds
not.
like a long time.
I
Yeah.
know. And I'm like, no, like 2014 would absolutely make sense for virtual assistants to really like get out there. And I feel like it's so much more out there than of course it was. But I'm like, yeah,
Yes.
no, 2014 makes a lot of sense now that I'm actually like doing the math. Um,
Yeah, because when I started, I didn't realize it had already been in existence for like a decade or more, right? And I was
yeah.
like, people have been working from home doing this work this long, and nobody thought to tell me that this was something that I could be doing. And I've been leaving my house for like the last 15 years. Like, go figure.
Yeah, they just didn't want to tell you yet, but you got there. I think a big problem that a lot of entrepreneurs or even like any type of business owners can deal with is we think that we have to do everything ourselves.
Yes.
And we have to feel like, oh, no one else is going to do it as good as me. I have to do everything. I have to manage
Yes.
everything. What do you have to kind of say? Like, what do you do to kind of like ease that tension when you're kind of talking to some business owners like that?
You don't, you don't, you don't, you don't. You don't have to do it all. I always say become a master delegator, right? Because it's going to literally exponentially your productivity, right? And your freedom. It's going to really give you your time back. And so really learn to become a master delegator. And you can start small, right? I get it that there's this fear around releasing control, right? That's a real fear that entrepreneurs have. And so it's like, how do I hand over my business to people who, one, I've never really met in person, I really don't know a whole lot about, right? And can I trust them to care for my business in the same way that I can, right? There are people out there who genuinely want to support you and have the best interests of your business at heart. And so I say start small, right? Think about some of the things that are not necessarily super confidential related, right? Like access to your financials. Like you can ease into that. Maybe you just start with your calendar. Make sure you put in controls that you actually have access and oversight over. So that way, if you don't feel good about the relationship, if it's not progressing the way that you want, you can immediately take back control of everything. But it's an absolute must that you start getting some of those things off of your plate, because the longer that you spend doing all of the things, you're missing out on other opportunities that could really grow your business.
Definitely. And I think that's a huge plus of working with someone like you, of having someone who has an agency, because that's really your goal. That's your job, is
Yes.
to make sure that the right person is put in the right role with the right business.
Yes.
And it's not just, like, oh, I have a new girl, I'll just give her to you. It's not, that's not how it works, right? It's a
No.
long process, I'm sure.
Yeah, so we have a very I am a process oriented person, right? My left brain is always thinking about how do we make this easier, better, more efficient for everybody involved, right? And how do we make our execs, you know, how do we make the experience for them super seamless? And so for us, we look at personality. Is it going to be a good personality fit, right? Is it going to be a good skill fit, right? We look at all of the things. We look at the work that needs to be done along with what the vision and the mission is of the company and the exec that we're supporting, and their immediate goals that they're trying to accomplish. And so we go through a lot of things to really make sure that we put the right person with the right exec and the right business to support, right? We even look at like, what are some of the personal things about them that we know this person would be able to relate to. So, for example, we have one of our clients who's really big in the arts and theater world. She does a lot of consulting. And so we had a support person who has an art and theater background. And I'm like, oh, there you go. Because who's going to understand the language better? Who's going to understand when you're talking about a show, right? I am not going to understand any of that, but she is going to understand that. And so it was a really perfect match for the two of them. So we go really deep, and everyone on our team goes through a really strong vetting process before they actually become a member of the team. So they're onboarded with us and they're training with us before they even get placed with a client.
That's amazing to hear, and I'm so glad that you touched on that, because I don't think people always understand, like, the purpose of what an agency is and what they're
Yes.
helping with, especially when it comes to this. Because I mean, I think it's easier that people think, like, I think a very common misconception is, like, it's someone you go on in like a Fiverr project, right? That's
Yes.
that's your virtual assistant. And I'm not saying that people on Fiverr don't do a good job, but
Right.
obviously this is like your personal assistant. This is someone who's going to learn everything about you, what
Yes.
makes it you, and then do everything personalized to you. It's not a one and done project.
Yes.
So that's, it's so glad that you talked, and it's so cool you guys are able to do those matchups, because like doing a theater matchup just makes so much more sense,
I
especially because
know.
they have an entire world that
It's a completely
I couldn't
different
learn.
world. It's a completely different world. And so it's like we have to look at those types of things as well. And we have to look at what are the kind of clients they're serving, right? Will their support person be able to be client facing with their clients if that ever came up, right? Can they communicate with them? Can they speak that language of whatever it is of the people that they serve? That's also another important element.
Yeah, that's such a great way to think about it, that you're thinking so long term for the people that you're placing with them. It's not
Yes.
just like, oh, you need a few emails done. Well, I have an email person. And then eventually it's like, well, I want this person to do this, this, this. And you're like, wait, I didn't realize. But you guys are already thinking proactively, which is a huge plus when it comes to things
Yes.
like this. Because sometimes,
Absolutely.
I we have a VA, me and my dad, we have a VA together, and we have a great relationship with her. And it's able that we're just able to talk to her, and she kind of knows at this point what we want, what we're looking for, the style of what we want, and what kind of messages we want, right? So she knows how to do a lot of those things.
I love that.
Um, yeah, so I mean, I love having a VA. She's a great person to talk to, and she's a great, she always gets the things done. So,
Yes.
before we hop off, I just want to say, number one, thank you so much for the time. This has been so much fun, and I feel like I could do this for another like 30,
Me
40 minutes,
too.
just kind of talking, because this is actually like a super fun topic. But before we hop off, if you could have coffee or whatever beverage of your choice with any entrepreneur, dead or alive, who would it be and why?
Oh my gosh. There I have so many great ones, but my choice, I think right now would be Mark Cuban
Yeah.
because of, yeah, just like his journey to becoming a billionaire and such a prominent figure in the business industry. I would love to just sit down and chat with him about all the things like entrepreneurship, learn some investing tips from him. He's really big in like this technology piece. And so all of those things are exciting to me and they're relevant to my business. And so I would just love to sit down and literally just have a notepad and just soak up everything that he has to say. And I love his like no nonsense approach to business. It's very similar to kind of my approach. And so
Nice.
I would just love to sit down and pick his brain.
Yeah, I think there's some of the funniest moments that, he's like a very underrated kind of funny, I think, on Shark
Yeah.
Tank. Is like Mr. Wonderful is always really funny, but I feel like the stuff that Mark says, it's kind of underappreciated.
Yeah.
Because he really does just tell it like it is.
He
Um,
does. And it's like, sometimes it hurts, but he's like so right.
Yeah. And I'd rather someone always be honest with me, even if it hurts for a little bit, because it's just
Yeah,
probably going to help me eventually in the long run.
absolutely.
So Gwendolyn, thank you so much for the time today. This has been a total blast. I really feel like we have so many things in common, and there's
Yes,
just so much more that we could talk about. So I really appreciate the time today. This was a lot of fun.
it was. Thank you, Macy, for the invite,
Of
and we'll talk
course.
soon.
Definitely. And to everyone watching, I really appreciate you as well, and I will see you next time.